Hi, Rosa. Thanks for joining me, friend.
Thanks for having me.
I have been so looking forward to talking to you and getting a sense of who you are and where you come from and all of your ideas about practice. And I feel like there's just so much to learn and absorb. So I'm so grateful we're having this conversation. Um, as you know, I really love to start by asking people about their life story. And for me, this is always about the person that I'm speaking with and who they are and where they come from. I like to, I'm trying to learn over time how to understand who a person is and really see them and what their qualities are and what their characters are and see what I can see about someone. And that's a skill and set of skills, and I'm always working at that. And for me, asking about someone's life story, hearing them tell about what they've seen and where they've been and what they've gone through is a way into that, to understanding what they find important and what events were really memorable to them and how they relate to it, how they make sense of that. So I know it's an enormous question. I know it can be an intimidating question, but you can kind of make of it what you will. Some people tell their story in a very short way, some people long. Uh, you can tell it very matter of fact or poetically, dramatically, whatever you like. The floor is yours. I would love to hear from you about your life and your story and what you've been through.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the very full and warm invite as well. That feels yeah, like I've been really looking forward to this conversation as well. Felt like it's held a lot of gravity and just a sense of yeah, a very full invite to step in and speak. Um, so yeah, my life story is an unusual one, maybe. Maybe everyone's life story is unusual when they really reveal. Um, But I would start basically by sharing that I'm a Buddha and that essentially changes the sense of what a life even is. And it kind of changes, yeah, the sort of structure of what it means to be a being or what a meaning making structure is. It's like different types of causality, to linear causality come in. Um, and so I kind of wanted to start with a bit of context around that, or just describe some of my present moment experience as a way, as a sort of doorway into what my life experience is. Um, and one of the most helpful things I found to like introduce that to people is the three bodies. So there's yeah, in Buddhism, there's the concept of the three bodies where a Buddha essentially is kind of connected to three bodies, and one is the Dharmakaya, one is the Sambhogakaya, and one is the Nirmanakaya. And the Dharmakaya is just this kind of like yeah, it's like a timeless, spaceless, uh, like truth quality, and that feels very present for me at all times. And the feeling is almost kind of like a, it's just like a sort of blinding white light void that just sort of like permeates everything and is timeless and uh yeah, is an enormous part of my immediate experience at all times. Um and it's the hardest one to talk about because it's sort of like so ineffable. But when I really like drop into the energy and just kind of like allow it to be present and feel into it, some of the feedback I've got from people is that it's like kind of like a very clear, still water that's present. Um, and that brings like, yeah, it just brings a certain timeless quality to experience where it's like always the present moment. And then it's just kind of like disappearing. And then it's the next present moment. So it's kind of very hard from that place to sort of like go into linear time and be like a life so a life story is sort of like I have to kind of from this void sort of like construct a personality and a being, and um that is part of what is here clearly, but it's like it has this sort of very deconstructed like nature backdrop to it. um and then there's the Sambhogakaya, and this is called like the someone called like the enjoyment body or the bliss body, and it's sort of like often talked about as like Buddha realms and Bodhisattva realms. My experience of it, which is yeah, like very immediate and always present, is it's kind of like it's sort of like everything in the field is intelligent, energetic forces that are just kind of like creatively playing and revealing and uh yeah, creating everything. And this is the one where my life story kind of makes the most sense to me, because it's almost like it's sort of like this big epic cosmic art piece that's yeah, it's not held in linear time. It sort of has this imaginal causality where time and meaning can kind of jump around, and there's like meaning gravity wells that you can sort of rotate around for years, and then it's like move through, and you're like embodying an archetype and expressing something that wants to come through, and kind of um also in a sort of like immediate phenomenological sense, it's like the ways that emotions move through you, or thoughts or experiences. It's all this kind of yeah, it's like this beautiful dance of energetic expression that is um unfolding in a like patterned, intelligent way. um and yeah, that's sort of like where my natural meaning making gravity well and direct experience kind of lands. But that's very hard to like um sort of turn into a linear story that makes sense to people. But I think we could maybe play in some of that space and see what comes up. But and then yeah, there's like the physical realm. And clearly, like I'm a being, I'm a human, I'm Rosa. I've been on this planet for 34 years, or I'm 34, so 35 years. Um, and yeah, I've like had a series of experiences that have like led me to this moment. And um, yeah, I can sort of happily kind of dive in there and say things, some things that are like key there. And I think there's always like a tension in me between like really wanting to be just very human and like honest and vulnerable and like in the messiness, and be like uh yeah, like I've had all these challenges and it's been really hard, harder than I could have possibly imagined. And um, all the kind of like heartbreak and grief and challenge that goes into like being a human and living a human life. And then there's another piece where it's like there's this sort of like other perspective that is this kind of like universe just unfolding and revealing itself. And I think those two sort of being in tension and like creative, productive tension is in a way one of the core things that's been part of my life story. Um, Sort of like this really deeply impersonal, non-self, like hard to talk about, ineffable thing, like ever present, timeless, all of those sort of spiritual qualities. And then this like very just raw, direct human, like heart, body, mind that just really wants to yeah, like connect with people and live a meaningful life, and um yeah, all of those things. um are there any I'm curious if there's any parts of that where you're like, oh, I would love to hear more of this thing.
All of it is great. Yeah, I have some specific questions I'll get to later, but yeah, I feel like it's having me reflect on what I mean by this question because some of it's sort of, factual and autobiographical and, almost having the opportunity to write your own Wikipedia article of like, well, I did
Mhm.
this and then I did this and I was born here and then I had this and whatever. And then some of it is on kind of the second level you were talking about of at least as I understood it, like this relationship to meaning and almost the poetry of your life, or you were talking about imaginal causality and making a story of your life and what is the story,
Mhm.
and um, those are both important to me here. And then uh, yeah, the first one that I don't know.
That sounds good. Maybe I'll just say a few more facts.
Yeah,
Ground a bit
great.
more
Some facts. Love facts.
before I float off. Yeah, facts. So I'm British. I was born in London and uh, grew up there until I was like 6 or 7 and moved to Somerset, which is very, very kind of rural backwater UK, beautiful countryside, but not much going on. And yeah, my family situation was a middle child in my parents were lovely and inspiring in lots of ways, in other ways, like deeply neglectful, and had lots of uh, their own stuff going on, as I think is, common. But so there's a sense of like, I don't know, kind of like making my own way in the world from the off, I think that's a very strong thread. Um, and the sense and like some parentification and things where the feeling is like, oh, I'm the person who needs to like show up and take care of people, and I have the capacity to do that. That's a really, really strong thread in my life. Bessie. And um yeah, also a very atheist family. But also very like socialist, left wing. My parents met through the Labour Party, the left wing party in the UK. Um, and yeah, just kind of like deep values instilled around equality and like socialism. And also I think also being British, that just being more like in the water. I've been quite shocked when I've been to the US of the cultural differences in terms of like how little security net there are and things like that. Um, and yeah, always having, I would never have like understood it as this or called it this when I was younger, but always having had spiritual experiences, various kind of like energetic, shamanic things going on. Um, and that being quite confusing for me. I was like sick off school sick a lot when I was young. Also having always had like a big open heart where um that has just like been my resource in life. That's like been the place where I can rest through all the challenging things that I've had. And like access to jhanas as a kid and stuff like that. It's sort of kind of a sense of yeah, like spiritual qualities being very close at hand, even though I didn't have that frame or even sort of orientation as such. Um, and then yeah, in my 20s, I got married at one point in my 20s. I had a 10-year relationship, and yeah, we kind of like lived a whole life together where we sort of both had careers and bought a house and moved around and all sorts of very kind of like yeah, like normal life things, whatever normal is. But kind of like almost lived a whole life with that. And then at some point started getting more explicitly into well the route in was actually shadow work. That was kind of like my first route into like introspective stuff. I did some really, really deep shadow work, and that was so transformative for me that I was like, oh, this is like the most inspiring, most important thing. I really, really need to like do a ton of this and feel through a ton of stuff. And like uh yeah, I just got the sort of muscle memory in my system of like, oh, when I open to my hardest experiences and really feel them through, I come out the other side and I'm like way lighter, way more free, way more open. And that just massively inspired me. So I kind of went on a big mission with that. And then yeah, in my late 20s started meditating. And then that sort of like as soon it's almost like uh it was like lighting the fuse on a rocket ship or something. It was kind of like all just really, really ready to go. And the meditation was sort of like the last thing to drop. And that was kind of when my big spiritual journey took off. Um, yeah.
What happened then?
What happened then? um, what happened then was that, well, so the way I got into meditation, I had tried meditating before and had some, and either I was just like so dissociated, I just couldn't be present, or the experience I had was so intense, I was like, never doing that again. Um, and then basically I read Daniel Ingram's book, Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. And uh yeah, for anyone who hasn't read it, it's sort of like a kind of manual to Theravada Buddhism, I suppose. But lots of people I know are sort of like, oh, I kind of love that book and I'm kind of annoyed with it because it was like because it was like, here's all the stuff that can happen if you meditate really hard. And it was like, got me way too excited and way too like, and I just needed to sit down and meditate for like 5 years before I even started feeling any of that. And for me, it was the total opposite. I read the book. I was like, oh, and it was sort of saying like, oh, if you meditate really hard for 10 years, you can start getting like these deep concentration states. You might have these energetic, you might have these things. And I was like, oh, literally, if I just close my eyes, I'm like in the stratosphere. And it was just helpful for orienting around what the hell even that was and what was happening. It's almost like before that I had such a kind of like secular modern scientific sort of view that I just didn't know that it was possible to like feel those sorts of things inside of you. And so yeah, I started meditating and then I kind of layered the shadow work stuff on the top. And the shadow work stuff, uh it's specifically from Cliff Barry's shadow work therapy, and it's like it's very sort of pragmatic in the way that it's like a bit like IFS kind of thing, just like on the surface it's very sort of, oh, you're dealing with parts and this and that, and there's a bit more of an embodied element and a group element, and yeah, but it's very practical. But underneath it there's like this whole kind of like shamanic archetypal uh yeah thing that's going on, and that is sort of like uh lots of the facilitators are kind of the shadow work facilitators, and then they have a more sort of mystical element underneath. um and so yeah, right from the off it was like just deeply unlocking and opening to all of this sort of like mystical archetypal um yeah, expansive experiences, and just sort of like folding that into this practice, which was, yeah, still very oriented around just like being present and not not neither like oppressing that nor like running away with, oh, this meaning is true. Just sort of like becoming an empty vessel for uh the sort of yeah energies and experiences to like reveal themselves, and yeah, using noting practice, so just calmly kind of noting, concentration practice, so just like really allowing what was present to really fully be present, and shadow work process, so when there's um something coming up that didn't feel like fully clean yet, just like getting to the thing underneath and being like, oh, and just taking away layers and layers and layers. And then yeah, basically pretty quickly the boundaries between me and reality and the universe and meaning just started unraveling, because I'd done so much shadow work leading in, and I already had such a big open heart that it was just sort of like the meditation. Yeah, it was just sort of like a little, and then it kind of everything just sort of started unraveling in this really intense way. I did a bunch of retreats, all quite short, but just like deeply impactful. Lots of sort of explosive, energetic experiences, Kundalini stuff, being in like altered states of consciousness for many weeks at a time, the whole time sort of like unraveling into this realm where, yeah, like the archetypal is in everything, and everything is a metaphor for this like deeper meaning, and just kind of, yeah, essentially going into what other people would very clearly describe as spiritual psychosis, but that to me felt, to me was this like shadow work process of becoming closer and closer to truth. And then in summer 2019, that's when it sort of shifted into um yeah, it's like the energies took over, and there wasn't a, I sort of fell out of, like I fell out of time is maybe one way to describe it. It's like really hard to uh describe what went away and what remained. But from that perspective, I had no concept of like, oh, I'm Rosa, I'm a person, I have this past and this future and these plans. It was just like energies kind of revealing themselves to themselves and unfolding. Um, and the, yeah, and then at that point it became even more intense, basically, and just like completely unmanageable, completely beyond my capacity to uh I mean, I did deal with it because I'm still here, but barely, it feels like. And um yeah, it was just like a, I ran out of words at that point to describe it. And that, yeah, that lasted a good, it depends where the cutoff point is of like how intense. But there was like a couple of years where it was going in and out of getting worse at times, and me just being like, I have no concept of how this could get any worse, and then it would get worse. And then yeah, since that couple of years, a more kind of like stabilizing energy coming in, with still some like enormous disruptive energetic processes happening. Just everything being turned upside down and inside out, and that sometimes being incredibly physically painful or just like emotionally intense, or um but yeah, going towards like stability rather than complete, just like, yeah, the feeling of the first couple of years is just like everything getting put through the cosmic paper shredder, uh, just relentlessly. Um, yeah.
What happened in the human Earth factual realm during that time? How did you help yourself get through that period? What were you doing? If someone was watching you, what would they see?
Yeah, yeah. So I'd just so I was living alone in Devon, which is a very quiet part of the country. I didn't know anyone around there. Um, and I was basically just like in my little cottage most of the time, just like lying down. Well, there was different phases, but a lot of it was just like lying down, I can't move. Like whatever's happening, it's taking up like 200% of my capacity right now. And I'm just like, I'm out. And afterward, like I'd get intense periods of it and I'd just be kind of like passing in and out of being awake and being asleep, or like afterwards I'd be absolutely slammed and not able to get out of bed for like 5 hours or something because I'd just be exhausted. Um, that I would say that that is probably the most of it. It's also like in the state of consciousness that I was in, memories didn't really form. Uh, so it's hard to access back to that time. Um, there was like a specific period of 6 weeks where there's almost zero memories, and then outside of that, it's like more patchy. Um, but then I was still working. I had a very, very part-time job. And so one of the weirdest things about the experience is that it wasn't just there was a lot of internal stuff that was happening, but by any means it wasn't just an internal process. It's like the whole universe became the process, and every single detail was a metaphor for something that I was like processing. Um, and that's the bit that goes into like, what people would think of as spiritual psychosis, basically. Um, but I would sort of describe it as if I hung out with you in that time or spoke to you in that time, my experience of you is that you were just like the voice of the universe or the voice of a like energetic expression that was coming through, and there was a kind of like, yeah, energetic dance that was happening underneath that had this sort of like deeply synchronous unfolding where everything was sort of like revealing. It's almost like the universe sort of turned itself upside down, and the kind of as above, so below thing. It was sort of like revealing the below side and being like, oh, literally everything here is a metaphor for something that people are conscious of. And you don't need to worry about the bit of the being conscious bit. You just like focus on this metaphor bit for this time. Um, and yeah, it's sort of and so there was a part where I was kind of interacting with the world in a normal seeming way, um, which is kind of similar to now, which is that I can interact with the world in a very normal seeming way, and it's like way more seamless now as well. So one of the big things is that these different kind of like parts of experience, one of the deepest ways I relate to what happened to me and what I'm here for and my purpose is almost kind of like a synthesizing vessel, where it's like these different bits of the universe that sort of seemingly seem like completely unrelated. It's actually one sort of expression that's coming out. And so I can be in an experience that's like wildly different to everyone around me and attuned to almost like a completely different data set and data point, but it's still sort of like the same essence and expression underneath that's kind of like telling a story that each person can, each person's like sense making uh can sort of like I don't know what the metaphor would be, but sort of like resonate with maybe. Does it make any sense?
It does, yes.
Hmm.
Hmm. And what are you choosing to do with your time and your life from this place?
Hmm. Yeah. I would maybe say I'm not choosing choosing not choosing anything, but I would say that what is coming through is, yeah, I mean I still process, I still spend a fair amount of time just feeling, processing, being with. That's still a fair amount. And then beyond that, there's yeah, a sense of a way of being that wants to come out into the world and be expressed. And it's just kind of like honoring and allowing that to happen. And part of that is like, yeah, writing, sharing about it explicitly, teaching, um, organizing retreats, things like that, where it's just about giving space for the things that I embody to sort of come through. Um, Another part is supporting other people. So I think an enormous part of kind of my dharma and the way that I hold experience is that, yeah, there's these sort of two tracks of like non-self and true self. And for each person, that experience of like how those two things synthesize and how like Buddha nature or the universe or whatever you want to call it is like manifesting through you is going to be unique and like really um yeah, so a part of my work is like supporting other people on their journey, which is going to be, could be inspired by, informed by uh yeah, and other things by my journey, but is also about like it's about really attuning to them and supporting them rather than like teaching my way of being. So I do a bunch of that as well. And then yeah, some other projects as well, which are more about kind of like looking at a societal, collective, like global level. How does this thing apply? So yeah, like one of the core things is uh including the imaginal realm in what reality is seems to just be like the one of the things that wants to like come through in the world. And so sort of having a project around that. Also contributing to a project that is about feeling nature and the ecosystem and the biosphere as Buddha nature, and what, how does it feel to like connect with that and feel, yeah, either like resource for feeling climate grief or even just like resource for feeling, attuning to what feels good when we're in connection with the planet in a really healthy way. um so it's sort of, yeah, kind of thinking at a collective level, what are the yeah, what is it? It's like my being is sort of oriented around kind of like presence and truth and open-heartedness, wholeness, realness, and then it's like it's sort of different ways that that comes out on a, yeah, like a societal level, on a kind of supporting others level, and on a like honoring my own full truth and finding ways to express that level.
I'm gonna rewind to your childhood. Uh,
Mhm.
you talked about having these spiritual experiences from a young age, even if you didn't have a frame for them or understanding. And um, I'm curious if you can tell me a story from your childhood about whether about those spiritual experiences or something else that um, maybe you didn't understand at the time, but has since become kind of meaningful to you.
Mhm. Hmm. Yeah, one of the things that is coming through right now, which um I'm wondering whether this answers the question, but I'm just going to go with it. The feeling is the feeling I had for a long time, and certainly when I was a kid, is that we live is a deep knowing and a deep capacity to see and read people and to know what they need and to be able to like offer kind of love to that and be like, this is what is needed here, and a kind of really strong orientation around that. Um, and the obvious sense that no one talks about this layer of reality. It's like this layer of reality that I know is there, I can feel very clearly, and no one ever talks about. And I'm just going to assume that everyone else also knows it's there. And we just, that's like the polite thing to not share this thing. Um, and this is maybe it's now like moving around with time, but I've done kind of like regression therapy to when I was born. And the feeling was of coming, it's almost like from the second I came into the world, the thing that I was, that the feeling was of being surrounded by people who are very anxious and worried and stressed, and giving people the message like, don't worry, I'm here to take care of you, from that from like as long as I can remember, basically. um and yeah, I think a lot of that came out as just sort of like sweet moments where I would caretake for people and just show up for them and care for them. um and I think a way in which I was, yeah, maybe deeply confused by life is like, if people have this, if people can feel this sense of like goodness inside of themselves that I can sense and feel and see and potential, like why do they behave like this? um yeah, I can like still feel the sadness of it now. It's like and sort of just having like really deep confusion in my system around that, and a lot of like pain and um yeah, just like desire for people to feel safe and happy and well. And sort of like being very confused about why that wasn't what was happening, or just sort of um yeah, yeah, kind of a lot of like emotion around that, I guess. And I think what I've, yeah, come to learn a lot more recently is that people don't have those resources in them. It's not like available to them to feel just like fundamental love, or to feel the like nourishment of having their heart open and to feel connected with people and for that to feel safe, or they kind of, yeah, have a lot that's like challenging for them, and it's part of my role to sort of like help people with that, I guess.
Mm.
And I think that there's some spiritual experiences that are more kind of like, yeah, my own experiences around jhanas or energies or synchronicities or things like that that happen. But that the other one, although it's sort of in a way feels more like mundane, it feels more sort of like core to me somehow.
Mhm. Yeah. If you could go back in time and speak to, let's say, your 6-year-old self and this little girl that's, already experienced a fair bit, but is also going to go on this extended journey that you've been through with so much, what would you tell her?
It's funny, the first thing that comes up is that she would probably tell me something, which says something to the dynamic. But what would I tell her? Yeah, something very simple. Something like you matter. Something like, yeah, it's a really nice quality that you care lots about other people, but you matter as well.
Hmm. You have a sense of what she would say to you?
Yeah, I get an image of us just um hugging, and yeah, just the sense of like attunement being available, being really like on a body level, just being really felt.
Would have liked to have met you at that time. We're about the same age, so it would have been
Oh,
nice to have
nice.
met you at that time. Hmm. How does it feel having talked about all of this?
Yeah, it's nice. Um, I think the part of me that the part that feels vulnerable is a bit that it's like, does this make any sense to, to anyone else? Um, and uh, yeah, I can just feel the sort of big journey specifically I've been on around like words and finding my voice and finding the way to, like, say these things that just feel completely like felt and hard to put into words. yeah, but I mean, other than that, it feels just like really nice to connect and um yeah, share more and just have space to share my story.
think it makes sense to me so far.
Mm.
I don't know. A journey is so full, and may not understand all of it, but I think you're coming through loud and clear. Did you have any teachers or guides that were helpful to you on your journey?
Yes. Um, yes. I've never had like a formal sort of teacher-student relationship with one person, but um, I think, I mean, I think even, talking about the kind of childhood stuff, I think uh, both my parents taught me an enormous amount. Um, I had a teacher at my first school who just sort of like saw the thing that was in me and kind of really encouraged it out of me. And it's just like that amount of sort of like early kind of like being seen was just enormously helpful. And then yeah, in the more sort of like um kind of spiritual phase, I would say that the sort of every shadow work facilitator that I experienced just uh yeah, kind of blew me away with their capacity to just to like just be present with what's here without needing to change it. It's like such a core transmission that just transformed everything for me. And um yeah, it's like I haven't met the guy who made it, Cliff Barry, but it's just such a amazing modality that he's created. And then yeah, everyone I've encountered who facilitates that was really inspiring and kind of like yeah, powerful and helped me. Um and also with that the framework that I use, which is I use body, heart, mind, soul. The shadow work uses four archetypes. So the sovereign, warrior, magician, lover. And I take quite deep inspiration from my framework of that. Like, yeah, it's not just the kind of mental framework around it, which I also love, but also just like the transmission I got from that of like, oh, these like distinct modes of being in the world that kind of like open up different aspects of experience in really powerful ways. That kind of came from there. So yeah, that taught me an enormous amount. And then yeah, um like short retreats with teachers that moved a lot in me in terms of um like where my understanding of meditation came from. Like I said, Daniel's book was the kind of biggest influence on that. I also love Michael Taft's podcast, and that it's just like to me, I'm a very like absorbent person and can like get a lot from a very short amount of information just from like people's tone and all the things that are being said in between the words of what are being said, and just the way that that podcast is like a series of deep interviews with like all these different people from all these different traditions, and you just like get a hit of their whole thing. It's like amazing. I learned a lot from that, and another Rob Bayer was another big one. Again, I haven't like gone deep into his framework and his kind of sort of more like logical stuff, but just like his transmission and his yeah, the way he taught the imaginal, it's like I listened to three or four of his talks and it just sort of like turned my world upside down. It was like, oh, there's like all of these layers of experience that are like available that I didn't know were available before. Um and yeah, I think there's something I love to sort of like honor, maybe this is reflective of my experience as well, the sense of like yeah, not necessarily about what someone is teaching, uh, kind of like the ideas, but it's sort of like the process that their body and their energy body has gone on to integrate, to sort of like work through and integrate a way of being in the world, um, that you can then sort of like attune to and kind of pick up on the yeah, get the transmission and just sort of like um yeah, it's like someone's dedicated their life to a way of being, and they just sort of like open the door and you kind of stroll through and you're like, cool. um that's, I feel like, you know, Rubber Bear is a great example of that for me. Yeah, and then more recently I think there's a sense of yeah, just being in a network of really brilliant people who inspire me and show me different parts of experience, and hold space for me to open to things I couldn't open on my own. Our mutual friend Jane is one wonderful example. um, yeah, yeah, and just a bunch of amazing people like that who've really helped me.
We do have some lovely friends.
Mhm.
You started your story by saying, I'm a Buddha, and I would
Mhm.
love to know what that means to you. You talked about the three bodies, of course, but can you say
Mhm.
more about that?
Yeah, so I have a section on my website about this, and I have like a list of 50 things that I mean. Um, so it's almost like there could be, it's a bit like it's a bit like part of being a Buddha is that was a friend of a friend of ours actually described me as he said he was describing me to someone, and he said that I'm like an embodiment of Indra's net, where if you pick one thing up, it's like you suddenly pick everything up and then you've got the whole universe.
I asked some friends about, I don't always do this, but I like to come up with my own questions, but I did ask some friends if they had any suggestions for what questions I should ask you. And this came up multiple times. Multiple people said, just be with her and it'll happen. It's good. Like, anyway, someone said it that way and other similar things. No one offered any questions. They were like, no, you don't, no.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think that that's, it's sort of like in a way the thing is just that it's like uh it's like a universal force is the thing that is happening, and that sort of like happens to be channeled through this body that is mine and called Rosa, and um but the sort of context is this like Indra's net universal force. It's yeah, and specifically one of the things that I see and envision and feel very deeply is that yeah, like something like a new kind of Dharma is wanting to like come through. And yeah, that's like it's like a universal thing. It's not like a one person job, but it's just kind of like seeing the way in which yeah, like the last 100 years, so much has changed and so much has become possible in terms of like therapy, introspection, meditation, psychedelics, like resource safety, um, uh, the amount of spare time that people have to like do these things, or at least, you know, a section of the world. It's obviously not everyone. Um, and just kind of like feeling and seeing that coming through. Also, the science side of things, like the fact that like quantum physics is a whole new thing, and that's like totally popping off now in terms of like Michael Levin's work on bioelectricity, and like which totally maps to what I'm describing as like the imaginal realm and the Sambhogakaya, and my direct experience of these things. It's like these things that in the past would have been like, oh, that's like mystical, and then this is scientific. It's like I'm having these mystical experiences and then reading this scientific stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's literally just like direct match. You don't even have to sort of uh like make a leap to make it the same thing. And yeah, and so I guess I think my role in that is to be a kind of empty vessel that embodies the direct experience. Uh, so yeah, obviously, kind of like in that sort of gestalt of all the different things that is uh, a new way of being emerging in the universe. There's scientists and teachers and practitioners and yeah, all these people who are contributing to that, and um, it's almost like yeah, it's sort of like what I describe as awakening is being able to just be directly present with experience. And it's sort of like having been taken through a process where I'm directly present with the full experience of uh what uh yeah, the thing that wants to emerge. Um and a kind of it's interesting because when I say that it's like a direct experience with the thing that wants to emerge. And then there's also a thing which is sort of like uh which relates to the three bodies, which is sort of like outside of the thing, where there's a strong void quality, a spaciousness, a recognition that time is just always we're all there's not like it's not like oh there's this one paradigm shift and it's going to happen and it's happening now. It's sort of like seeing the way that that's always happening, has always happened, it'll always happen. That's sort of like what the universe is in a way. Um, and yeah, it's like folding in on itself now. But I think that that is part of what is being awoken to, is the way that the universe is participatory and we're like the expressions of the intelligence. Um, yeah.
This was very much woven into your story, and I feel like I have a sense of it from how you talked about it, and um, also from hearing Jane talk about it. But I would be curious to hear you describe in your own words what imaginal causality means to you.
Mhm. Yeah, there's an idea from a sort of modern scientific rationalist perspective, let's say, that the universe is an evolving universe that sort of figures it out as it goes along. And that happens in a kind of causal, linear time, mechanical way. Um, and I would say that that's not untrue, but it's not the whole truth. It's like one piece of the truth. And imaginal causality is kind of like a greater, it's sort of like a bigger perspective that is, yeah, what comes through. It's like the butterfly's already in the caterpillar. And the universe is telling a story or revealing an art piece through us. And one of the ways that it organizes is through kind of is around like, yeah, meaning and um, metaphor and myth and um, yeah, there's like a relationship between meaning and energetics where it's like the story that's being told and the impact that's being created is yeah is being the causality or the sort of source of what creates like the future or what creates the present is as much that sort of like energetic meaning layer as it is anything that was like a series of events in the past that led to this moment.
How did you start to see that for yourself and get a sense of it? Do you remember any specific things that were happening to you where you started to see that way?
Yeah, so I think the big thing that kind of like pops this open is synchronicities,
Hmm.
because that's kind of it's sort of imaginal causality is essentially saying that it's like a perfectly synchronous universe. And so when you start having synchronicities that are yeah, where and a really nice definition I heard of synchronicities is that events are linked by meaning rather than linear time. Um, so it's kind of yeah, moments of meaning coming together and that seeming sort of unlikely or even impossible at times. Um, that kind of like starts opening it up. And then I think the deeper bit was me kind of purposefully, and this was inspired by Jung as well, who um also kind of like purposefully went into a spiritual psychosis state and went off into the archetypal realms. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. There's a breadcrumb left for me there. And it's almost like that bit where you get the kind of like as above, so below thing. Just kind of like feeling the deeper meaning layers and resonances is what starts opening it up.
Hmm. You have a sense of what the causes and conditions are of someone noticing or noticing synchronicities or having them occur?
Yeah, so I think there's another piece to this, which is that, and this relates actually to the question you asked about the spiritual experiences in childhood, which is that one of the ways, and also to being a Buddha, which is one of the ways I describe my experience now, is it's a bit like I'm not seeing with my eyes, I'm seeing with my heart. And yeah, there was, I think there was a deep reason why the kind of shadow work was the route in, because it was almost like getting to a level of open-heartedness to really receive. It's like you're receiving the deeper layer and the deeper meaning of what's present. Um, and habitually people are kind of like up here in a sort of quite a small like subset, and probably just mostly in their left hemisphere, and kind of like looking in this sort of logical way. And it's almost like a process of like, oh, opening up to a bit more right hemisphere, like dropping into the body, feeling the heart more, feeling the resonance more, like being willing to yeah, kind of be with the impact, be impacted and moved by a broader range of experience. Um, I don't know, this is like maybe, I don't know if this is a good example, but like early on in my kind of meditation experience, I was just like absolutely dedicated to being present. I was like, nothing's going to stop me from being present. And uh I remember being in London and being on the tube, and I was like, oh, even here, I'm just gonna be fully present and just like fully receiving people's vibes, looking at adverts, being like, I'm normally just like so blocked off to adverts and like, no, 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 no. And I was like, just what happens if I just let it in? Like, I was just like open, 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 just like really everything, every single thing. I'm just gonna fully let it in. And then I went back to my like hotel room and just lay on the bed, and it was just like fireworks going all through my body of kind of the intensity of like letting in all of that. Yeah, like it's sort of like kind of meaning information and resonance and sort of the kind of like vibes level. It's almost like the more people can open to that, and I think yeah, like safety and um openness and open-mindedness and all of those things are kind of some of the causes and conditions there.
I want to ask you about a tweet that you had that has been very meaningful to me. As I'm sure, I imagine this is not foreign to you, but my sense is that often, well, this is true for anything, I think, but tweets in particular are a place where I notice this a lot, where it's sort of easy to start noticing this, that uh, almost like the artifact contains an energy that from the person who's creating it. And so I guess I mentioned that because the statement that I'm going to ask you about, I think if it came from someone else, would kind of seem like a platitude,
Mhm.
or just like a Hallmark card or something. But for me, it's been like honestly such a resource. It's given me such comfort and faith from the energy that you put into the tweet. Like the word, yeah, the words energy discrepancy is pretty high on this one, at least for me. So I want to ask you what you mean, and well, yeah, to say more about it. The one that really had the impact on me is actually the second tweet in a thread. So I'll read the context first,
Mhm.
which now that I look at, it, I'm like, well, the words are actually quite significant as well. But the conclusion you draw from it sounds a bit like a platitude, but has that energy for me. Are you following so far? Is that before? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so the first tweet was a succinct definition of the bit of emptiness that I feel is mostly missing from Buddhism. There's a collective, intelligent, energetic, and physical unfolding of events that is occurring regardless of anyone's first person experience of it. And then you said, you're here to play you in the story, and you're doing a perfect job. Uh, I can feel it now. Like, um, it just gives me this relief and sense of faith and comfort that I'm doing okay and that it's okay to be me and that I'm doing a good job at being me when yeah, I like you in a different way, like many of us, I'm a weird person and there was no manual for how to be a Tasshin. I really wanted one, and the more I get weirder, the more I'm like, I don't know, is this right? I think it is, but how do I know? And so that has given me great comfort, and the energy in it really is such a medicine for me. And I would love to hear you speak about that phrase that you're here to play you in the story and you're doing a perfect job. What that means to you, why you wrote that.
Yeah, yeah, Lush, thank you for reflecting that back. That was really nice to hear. And I enjoyed your delivery of it as well. Felt like it also had the right energy in it. There's something in it that's like it's almost like a little bit got a glint in the eye in its sort of um in its expression. And I think this really comes from, yeah, being in this sort of like synchronous cosmic story thing and just being like, I don't know what is going on, but clearly it just it seems to be the thing that wants to happen. Starting from there, but then also like really seeing that with others that sometimes I'd have these like such weird synchronicities where I'd go all the way around the houses and then I'd like just show up in someone's experience just like at the perfect time with a little weird thing and I'd be like, oh, like clearly my whole thing was around that. But also others would do that for me. They'd like show up in this very, very specific, have these, life experiences show up in this very, very specific, unique way. And it would just move me in a certain way. And I'm like, wow, that person is just nailing their role.
Mm,
And like the absurdity and really going into like um I actually love this is like one of my favorite things is the absurdity of kind of like all the unique quirks of everybody's personalities. And like that's the thing that if I just think about myself and all the little things that make me me, or like some of the people who I'm most kind of impacted by or entangled with, and like what makes them them. And when you get a group of people and that gets even more complexified and like everyone's sort of showing up in this very specific way that creates this very specific energy that moves things in a very and it's always the right thing. It always like unravels in a way that's the right thing. Kind of uh because there couldn't be a wrong thing. But there's something in, yeah, like really seeing the absurdity of that. Also, I think on the flip side, it comes from a deep place of wholeness as well. But it's like seeing the pain of that and like how hard it is for people to be beings and be themselves and like live a life and how much, oh yeah, just like how so many people around me have such deep struggles in life and they're here to, yeah, make something manifest or like overcome a specific thing that they then share with the world. And yeah, the kind of like beauty of that and just honoring it's sort of like seeing this incredible, the image I get is like a like enormous mosaic cathedral, something like Gaudi's cathedral or something, which is like every little bit of detail that goes into this like labor of love that is someone's life, a community, the universe. It's just this sort of like fractal of, yeah, pain, beauty, absurdity. Um, yeah, it feels like there's this kind of, it's very juicy for me.
thank you for that answer. The question that's coming up for me um, is, well, I write fiction these days, and I think a lot about story, and I read a lot of books, novels, and I watch a lot of movies and TV shows, and think about how stories work. And then I also look at people's lives in terms of story. That's why I asked, like, what's your life story? And something I found useful to think about when looking at people's lives as stories is sort of a three-act structure where there's the first act, and that was kind of the story you told me, which is your childhood and this sort of spiritual awakening process that you've gone through and making sense of that and then now we're here and we're living act two, which is I don't know. And so that's sort of the question is what is your sense of what act two is about? Something like 30, 33 to 60 of your life. Like
Mm-hmm.
what's trying to come out of you in this section of your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my theme for the year is sovereignty. And I can really feel that, especially since you said, yeah, from there's a real shift uh last year and this year around just like being in my sovereignty and being an expression of that. And yeah, that not being particularly tied to any like particular conditions or oh, it needs to be X, Y, and Z thing. It needs to be a like running a retreat center or doing or writing a book or this or that. And it's sort of like all of those things are kind of potentially in the mix of how it might emerge. But there's something in that like being in serenity and especially the in the shadow work model, the gateway emotion to sovereignty is joy. And there's something about like finding my joy as a way of, yeah, like honoring that in myself. But also there's something about like modeling that you can both be really present, joyful, doing meaningful things, and uh that in a way is what success is. It's not like this external, there's an element of like, you know, you need a certain amount of resources, which I'm also you know, like wrestling with. um but it's not about like an external thing where you reach it and then you're like, ah, oh, now I'm a success. It's like being around people you love and doing things you care about and honoring your truth. And yeah, there's something in that that feels like it's part of the transmission that wants to come through, where it's like being really present. Um, and yeah, I imagine that will show a bunch of different ways. But I think the thing is, I don't want to get pulled away from that sense of like presence. Um, yeah. Does that answer the question? I could also list, you know, more specific things that might come, but
That was perfect.
cool.
I think you answered the heart of the question, so thank you. Uh, I'm always curious about this is a definite tangent, but um, how to ask questions in a way that gets at what I mean. And you heard what I meant and you answered
Mm,
that. So thank you.
nice.
Um, can you tell me about the genesis of your body, heart, mind, soul framework and how that came to you and what it looks like to teach in that way?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, so like I said, the initial inspiration was this shadow work framework, and the experience specifically with that was like yeah, so on my first on my sort of first experience, I had a kind of a lover sovereign process. And so it works with sort of inflation and deflation. My lover was deflated, and then you kind of bring in a sovereign to help you, and then your lover can like you can feel more essentially. And I sort of walked out into the world, and I was like, whoa, this is like what the world is when I can actually feel more. And so yeah, I'd kind of gone on years of like working with that framework and doing the different moves and working with inflation deflation. And then yeah, sort of got dropped into the upside down of the universe where I was like, oh, so this is kind of like the underlying energies or the sort of source code in a way. Um, and yeah, it was just sort of like feeling what that even is in different layers and just trying to make sense of it. So I went through a very strong phase where it was just relentless kind of like deconstruction, trying to make sense, deconstruction, trying to make sense. Just like notebooks and notebooks of like, it's this, is it this, is it this? It looked like going all over the place. Um, but the thing that kept coming back was this sense of yeah, these four elements. And for a while, I played with using that, actually the elements like earth, fire, um, air, and water to represent them. For a while, I used the Brahma Viharas because it was sort of like yeah, this thing of like seeing with the heart. So that was sort of in a way one of the first things I saw was that it's 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 not the kind of mind's idea of what's going on. It was sort of like more this sort of like heart perception layer. And I'm like, oh, it's sort of like these threads of energy that are, yeah, kind of like the Brahma Vihara qualities. And then I'd sort of like try something on and work through it for a long time and to kind of find its limitations. And then eventually sort of body, heart, mind, soul popped out, which, yeah, it's obviously kind of very simple. Um, but it just sort of captures the way, yeah, it captures this dynamic where this sort of like Indra's net quality where uh everything is interdependent with everything else. Um, and yeah, like the seeing with the eyes of the heart thing, for example, it's like clearly that's a really sort of heart-centered way of being, and it's about attuning to that sort of like love quality, which you can't see, and yeah, but I think everyone can feel that a sense of what love is, and when they feel connected to someone, and that's clearly like a present force. But then also, like for that to arise, you also need like a mind or consciousness to become be able for that to become aware. And you also need like a body and a physical heart for those two hearts to be speaking to each other. And then there also needs to be on the soul level a kind of meaning and a sense making thing that's going on. And so it was almost kind of like the distilled, it was like the distilled essence of what's the sort of, yeah, what's the most distilled way of um like what these elements of experience are that kind of create this this like really multi-dimensional complex rich thing that could be defined a million ways. What's a way of sort of like capturing the essence that doesn't flatten it and say, oh well, everything is consciousness, and just sort of like shut the doors too much, but doesn't kind of like make it way too complex and heady and like, oh, you have to understand like 17,000 things before you even start to be able to engage with it. It's like something that people that is just intuitively grokkable.
I was really moved by a passage in one of your pieces of writing where you talked about how soul was missing from Buddhism and
Mm.
how that was, you sort of connected it to uh, the feminine nature and how that had been sort of overridden and forgotten about. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's like a few things coming up. Um, Feels related a bit to the sort of three bodies qualities, where the Dhammakaya to me has that sort of it always comes with the with a kind of bright white, like pingy, perceptual kind of like really awake, wide awake feeling that has that sort of yeah like clarity, crispness, uh, mind masculine feel to it, and then the Sambhogakaya, which yeah also is very related to imaginal causality, the imaginal the soul meaning. It sort of feels like this kind of yeah, it's like very dark, black. It's like you can't see that the eyes of the mind, the normal eyes, like can't see in. It's sort of like the black box where there's just this sort of intelligent life force that's coming into being and is um yeah, organized around meaning. And I think one of the things that really opens this up is a sense of receptivity where um there's a shift from kind of like looking out at things and seeing and sort of defining and precision to like just being a sort of receptive, yeah, kind of like vessel. And it's sort of like very much a like heart centered way of being where it's almost like the richness of meaning and beauty and that we just don't know. There's like a deep not knowing and mysterious quality to it that feels a lot more feminine in terms of the move to be in it. Um, and also just in the way that it moves, it's kind of like this, yeah, it's like the beauty of the universe being a cosmic song and being played with an enormous amount of care or something. Um, feels very different to me. And then um, a part of the soul piece around it specifically is that, yeah, this really links to the tweet as well of "You're here to be you," and the story is that each person has a very unique connection to that, where like your body and your story and your meaning structure is only ever going to be experienced by you in this way. And not kind of like not like steamrolling over that and going, well, yeah, I know you've got your experience, but actually the Dharmakaya is actually the true thing. And that's bigger. And it's going to just like, it's like sort of leaning back and attuning and listening and being like, wow, like everyone has their connection to what I would call Buddha nature and everyone else would call, or people would call completely different things. And a deep sort of like humility and honoring of that uh, meaning and the way it weaves in on a collective level.
Yeah, throughout this conversation, there have been various flashes of it's hard to describe, but things I've known my whole life or suspected or had faith in, and about myself or my life or the world or how to show up with people, and things that are hard to describe. And those are kind of like, oh yeah, she's talking about that. Glad someone's talking about that. Nobody ever talks about that. uh, like just as a simple example that's salient in this conversation, I'm so curious. Every time I have one of these conversations, or really any conversation, but the podcast is a very structured way to notice this, consistent way. I'm always so curious about the process of how I ask questions of like, why do I ask that question and how does that come up? And there's a inner phenomenology of, oh, this is the question to ask, or this is where it's going, and this is, and I don't even know how I know that, but I do, I'm like, ask that
Mm-hmm.
one. So I feel really, that's one of the big things I've been receiving from this conversation is a connection to those intuitions about the world that are, yeah, that are not perceptible through the typical sense gates, but that there's a knowledge
Mm-hmm.
of anyway. Yeah, yeah. I wonder if you could speak about what approach you take to teaching and working with specific students. I've been so curious recently about, well, yeah, and I'll give some context for this question, which is I'm working on a new novel and we'll see where it goes. But as part of it, I've been thinking about like what I've learned in my own path over the years and like what the order was and how they connected to each other. And then thinking about like, well, that's the way it happened. So it just happened and here we are and I'm glad we're here. And also looking back, I'm like, I don't think that was actually an optimal order. And if I could go back and teach myself like this, then that in a different order, I think it would have gone a lot better and could have moved more swiftly. And I don't know that for sure because I don't have control over time and space, but um, I'm like, I think that would have been better. And I'm always curious about how teachers, yeah, there's a curiosity coming up from this process of how teachers reflect on their own experience and what they've been through and have really out of compassion trying to help other people in their own process. But then there's also meeting the student as they actually are and who they are in their own different path that's not yours, as you said. You said you're not, I forget the words you used, but you talked earlier about, I'm not just trying to take someone through my journey. I'm really trying to support them in theirs. And so how do you think about all of that and showing up for the people that you work with and what they're needing?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is a lovely question. Thanks. Yeah, I'm still figuring some of this out. And I would say I'm super lucky that I get to coach and have coached a bunch of really brilliant people. And so there's been space to um like learn a lot about people's experience through that process. Um so it's just been really fun. I just want to start by saying I love doing that. It's been fun. I'm very grateful for it. Um people's inner worlds can be very magical. Um yeah, I think there's a very clear sense that there was always a sense of a meaning making in my journey that I'm going through something so that it opens something up so that other people don't have to go through the whole process. Um, like I said, I also benefited from other people doing that. I kind of know what it's like to receive that. And yeah, the sense was not, oh, I'm going to go on a journey and then I'm going to teach people how to go on that journey. It's like I'm going to integrate something that's going to come back into the world in a more whole way. And in some way, I'm going to share that with people. And so, yeah, I've been playing with that a lot. So I've written a lot, I'm writing a lot. There's a way that some people I work with, my friend Yost, who's also a close collaborator, my friend Sam, who I also collaborate with, it's like they also help me like find words and things like imaginal causality and like different ways of describing what is going on, so that people can understand it. That's been a big part of the process. And then yeah, also playing with the sense of like transmission and yeah, like Jane's a great person to do this with because she's just really like got a super refined energetic sense. And so we just play with like I'm like, oh, what if I'm in this energy and you come towards me, and what if I come towards you with this, and what impact does that have? And yeah, because it's almost like it's new. It feels a bit like new tech in a way. I mean, a lot of this stuff has been around in various forms, in various traditions for a long, long, long time, probably since the beginning of humanity. But no one gave me a manual of like, okay, now you have all of these like energetic powers and capacities and insights and depth, and this is how you teach this.
Hmm.
So it's sort of been a bit of an experimentation. And um, yeah, one of the other things I've done is made this practice, shared imaginal practice, and that's sort of like it's kind of like a secular, safe way to start opening up some of these different senses in people that really impacts people. And often the the sort of response is even people who don't have a very deep spiritual practice are like, oh, like this has been here the whole time. I just wasn't like aware of it or attuned to it. And sort of like this more kind of energetic or metaphorical or part of experience. And so yeah, there's sort of like a kind of experimental process of how do I open these things up for people in a way that is safe, meaningful, uh, that people that makes sense to people. Um, and doing that through different routes of doing one-to-one work. Yeah, like teaching and writing, sharing practices. Um, There's something around like boundaries there that's very important, where it's sort of like there's something about the kind of implicit agreements of what we're doing when we're teaching that I'm always sort of like I've done a lot of navigation around, where it's like if I'm going out into the world and joining someone's meeting or like saying you know what I mean, there's like a way that I sort of feel that I'm kind of implicitly saying I'm going to show up in a way that's like somewhat normal.
Mm,
um and then if I'm coaching someone, there's a sense of like, oh, they're coming to me because they want to individuate, but they're also coming specifically to me to get something. And so there's a sense of like, oh, letting people into the full depth of what I'm in. Um, yeah, that's taken some like learning and skill around. It's sort of like what to share and how much to share. I mean, and interestingly, like one of the things that comes up is um the story of the Buddha where um I don't remember it, whether basically the universe said you need to go and find the people with little dust in their eyes. And having gone through that exact process of just like having experiences and just being like, no one's gonna get this. I'm not, I can't, I like just like no. And the universe being like, no, there's some people and they're gonna get it and maybe start over here and see what happens and just trust the process. And yeah, so it's been a learning journey. And
mm,
I think a lot of I think I'm maybe emphasizing the learning side of things. I think there's also a way that I have like a million ideas for projects and teaching and creativity. It's like one of the things I'm almost like overflowing with when people come to me with coaching and are like they're like keen to learn. I'm like, cool, we're going on an adventure, we're going over here, we're going over here. I can come up with practices, I can, I can write, I can, there's many ways. And I sort of I love sharing in that way. One more thing is coming up. I feel like I've already talked a ton, but there is one more thing that's coming up. I think there's a difference between, I think one of the things that we don't define in our culture is the difference between um, what you might call like a teacher and a guru. It's like that language like is a bit strange to us and has negative connotations, probably for good reason. Um, but for a long time, I didn't really I don't identify super strong with the archetype of a teacher. And I think that one of the things that teachers are very good at is like it's kind of it's almost like the image I get. It's like projecting an idea. It's like taking an idea and sort of projecting it in an inspiring way and being like, these are the key important points. Um, and the other side, and yeah, the other side is almost more like it's like a way of being that you embody on a deep level and that you share with people. Um, so another name I've called it, it's like a spiritual friend. But that's like a nice way. But then that also sort of like maybe dodges the power element of it a bit, which is like, oh, I do actually have deep wisdom and something that you're coming to me to learn about. Um, but yeah, there's a sort of like there's a kind of integrity and an agreement on my side where I'm like saying, no, this is really like my way of being, my way of living. I'm kind of the things that I'm saying aren't ideas that I'm taking and sort of projecting and sharing that are kind of disconnected from reality. It's like this is the deep truth that I live, and I want to be, yeah, I want to like be held accountable to that as well. I want to show up in that way with people all of the time. And that's like really important and meaningful to me. And I think that um yeah, just like being able to see those two roles as different things is somehow helpful, because I think one reason is that in the teacher role, it's like sometimes people get disappointed maybe when teachers don't live up to the things that they're sharing. Um, but I often think that people that's not what people are necessarily trying to do. Uh, Whereas this sort of like more kind of yeah embodied way of being, I'm sort of saying no, this is actually about the way of being, and that's what the message is. And I think maybe sometimes people want clearer, like teachings to come out, like a clearer idea that they can grab a hold of, and are maybe a bit disappointed with that. And like just being able to distinguish those somehow
Hmm.
feels helpful.
Hmm. I'm curious when you look around and see, this is the year 2025 on planet Earth, what you see us going through as a species and as a planet, and how you make sense of the things that are happening at this time.
Mm. Yeah. Um, yeah. I see a collapse, and I also see a it's almost like the when a new way of being comes forth in a person or a group or a society. There's like the simplest way, it's like the uh form, storm, perform, norm cycle. And it's like clearly there's a bit of a storm going on where uh yeah, a lot of people are suffering a lot. The economy feels like it's hanging off a cliff. The climate is like, what's going to happen with that? Um, and yeah, just coming from having such a strong sort of like shadow work orientation, it's like really feeling the potential of the richness of a moment in time where something new could be birthed. Um, and it feels like very close cut. Like there's always, it's almost like when a group is coming together and they're like storming, or when a person is storming, and I'm like, oh, is there an, it's like the kind of very sort of precise weighing of is there enough of the new thing that's sort of underground where there's like yeah, a different way of being that's more open-hearted, more like a greater circle of concern, um, enough resources that make that uh, like possible. So people aren't just subsistence farming all day, every day. Is there like all of these things that are kind of yeah, these different types of resources? It's like if everything sort of collapses a bit, is that going to sort of catch enough people that that then becomes a new way of being that comes forth? And um my felt sense and what I see is that that will absolutely happen. Uh, yeah, I just have like such a deep trust and faith in the story and the sort of like movement towards intelligence and connection and love. Whether it will happen in our lifetime or like, maybe now is the moment where major collapse and in 500 years they're like picking up the pieces and making something new. I think that there's like a kind of like a deep equanimity that comes online where it's not like I think it can become the idea of a kind of new paradigm or can become like another thing to like grasp towards of like, oh, we have to make this happen, or this is the only hope, like, oh, it can't collapse, it's got to, it sort of then becomes tense, which then can cause a deeper, it less likely to happen, or yeah, and it just causes suffering in and of itself. Yeah, so I think the sort of deepest place that I feel is an enormous amount of like equanimity, a huge timeline, a sense of like, yeah, meaningful directionality of the way things are going, and a deep, yeah, and a sort of like ability to really listen to the undercurrents of that and the cool things that are coming through, the really cool, inspiring new ways of being that are coming through and clearly wanting to flourish, uh and also just being in the deep mystery of just like, we'll see.
Hmm. Hmm. I find that such a both humble and inspiring answer. Yeah,
Mm.
I really appreciated that. It's easy to abdicate this question and just be like, well, I don't know. And it's easy
Mhm.
to be overly certain and sort of myopic about what is going to happen. And neither of those poles are very satisfying to me when people do those. And yeah, I appreciated the humility and confidence that you answered that with. Yeah. Hmm. Well, we have covered a lot of territory, and you've very kindly answered many questions about many topics. I wonder if there's anything that feels in the room that you'd like to say more about, or something you'd like to talk about, anything else? Yeah. Is there anything else that comes up that you'd like to share about?
Yeah, I think I have one question for you,
Hmm.
but at some point I can't remember exactly when, but I was curious how it is for you to navigate I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but it's almost like being yeah, having gone through your process and then being in the world. Sort of what does that feel like? Is there a clear sense of, I think there's something specifically around the kind of like vibes level, being attuned to energies, that sort of thing. I'm like curious uh how that shows up, or what is it specific enough?
I think something's coming up for me, and I'll speak to that. And if it scratches the itch that you have, you can say so. And if it doesn't, you can follow up. Uh, I'm reminded of how I felt in the hours and days leading up to this conversation, and that, I said to you earlier for this, I think that I often feel nervous before these conversations, and um, it's very familiar to me, but it felt a little bit acute for this one in that I'm proud of who I am and how I live my life and the choices that I make and the intentionality that I bring to the way I spend my time and my energy and what I do. And I'm also, yeah, similar to what we just talked about with your answer to the state of the world. I feel at the same time this sense of humility and really not knowing and openness. And I'm in such admiration of other people and people's gifts and who they are. And everyone really to me is astonishing that they feel like this incredible work of art. Like, wow, you really got here and you have something to say and you have something to give. And I try to be receptive to people's virtues and to learn from that and absorb that. And so, um, in coming into contact with your work and who you are and considering what questions to ask and that sort of thing, it's like Wow. There's a humility there of there's I guess what I'd say is there's things I really feel like I know that I'm just like I don't know how I know this, I don't know why I know this, but I'm going to live in accordance with this, and this is good, and I will act on this even knowledge doesn't feel like the right word, but it's not a factual knowledge. It's not something that you can be certain about in a headway, but it's a conviction. It's a faith. It's a trust. It's a resonance. It's like this is the direction to go. This is how one ought to live and how I ought to live and what is being asked of me. And at the same time, there's just I think I wish I had that certainty or that knowledge that it isn't of what the universe is and what we're doing here and why all of these things are happening and how they fit together. And the things that I don't know feel very acute. And that's a dance to live in accordance with conviction about what you do know, and then also be open to what you don't and what you still have to learn and still have to grow. And I think I've learned how to do that dance and how to stand with certainty in the things that I know and how to still be open and receptive and be like, well, I clearly have so much to learn and there are things that aren't working for me and there's always more to grow. Um, that's what comes up for me in response to your question. I don't know if that speaks
Mm.
to what you're asking about, but
Yeah, totally. No, that feels really rich. Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, and one of the things that you said that popped out, it was it's like, yeah, you've mentioned it a few times in the conversation. It just really pinged was the thing around like doing this podcast and asking people about their values and kind of the thing about being interested in people's life stories. It's almost like the feeling I got. It's like it brought up something which is yeah, specifically around the imaginal causality, soul, Sambhogakaya. It's like part of it is that it's like everyone has a thread, and it's like that thread has a unique sort of like uh yeah, like pull to it. And when you said that, I just got a sense of your thread, and it felt like a thing. Yeah, it's like somehow important to recognize the uniqueness of that. And it's like somehow folding in on itself where it's like that's also your thread, like following people, listening to people's unique thing. Yeah, but I think there's something really valuable in that seeing different people's expressions. And a story that comes up as well is that someone who I'm coaching, they wanted to get more in touch with the imaginal. And for me, it's very sort of like, uh, yeah, kind of energetic and, yeah, like sort of what you'd maybe imagine all these stuff to be. And they were like, I think when I tune into it, it's like very mathematical. It's almost like if you zoom in on the universe, everything's made of equations. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Like that's your like thread. I don't know. And that was one of the things that really pinged out. It was like your own soul senses that you're given, the way that you see and navigate the world. Uh yeah. Yeah. It's just nice to feel that amongst all the other stuff. It was really cool.
hmm. I'm reminded that one of the ways that I have held what a Buddha is almost mythologically, or I guess you could say imaginally, soul making in a soul making way, is that a Buddha is capable of meeting each person and teaching them as they are, like really seeing who they are and giving them the thing that they need. And I would one way I hold the Bodhisattva vows that I've taken is vowing to be a Buddha in the future lifetime. And
Mhm.
I feel this yearning to be able to do that, to be able to really see each person and show up in the way that they need. And I try to practice that. And then there's also alongside that just such a curiosity about how different people are and what it even means to be a person. I see in people's face or feel in their presence so much that is hard to put to words and hard to explain. And even in that, it's like I have this sense of being so new at it and so young, and like I can see a little bit and it's like, oh, that's there, but I know I just feel how much more there is, and the universe is so much more complex and mysterious and full than our little sense of it, and people are fractal in that way, that each person is, as you said this earlier, just there's such a richness of who that person is and how they got here and what they've been through and how they make sense of who they are and how they make choices and what they want. And everyone's so different. And I really, I'm also reminded of how I feel a bit allergic, maybe stubbornly and unusefully allergic to like personality type things, because
Mhm.
I'm just like, I want to figure that out for myself. I don't want to just absorb someone else's personality structure. I like sense typology or categorization system. I want to be like, who is Rosa? No, really, who is Rosa? Like, I'm with Rosa right now. Who's Rosa? Yeah.
Yeah, that's super nice. That really comes through. And it felt a bit like the invitation to come on the podcast. It was a bit like stepping out of the personality boxes. And
Mm,
actually, it's just when you were saying that, I got a memory of when we were talking earlier, and you said, um, I would have loved to have known you when you were 6.
mm,
And I just like suddenly at that moment had like this hit of this thing that I've always felt with you, but I didn't know that I'd felt, which was like a sort of past life childhood friendship thing where I was
mm,
like, whoa,
mm,
there's suddenly all of this stuff here. And
mm,
then the questions you asked me about kind of like connecting with her, and it just felt very like very attuned and very kind of like on point and uh very beautiful invitation. So
mm.
yeah, just sort of reflect that back.
I'm glad to know that. It's sort of on my mind actually, because, and this has been in the background of the conversation, but the story I'm writing right now is about two children. And um, I have an adult friend of mine that I met as an adult, and I'm like, oh, wondering what if we'd met as kids. And
Mm.
um, there's something there for me that I'm digesting through this project and the time that I'm spending on it. That's I don't think I'll know for a while what it's about, but it's being asked of me. So here we go.
Yeah,
Uh,
nice. Maybe a soul sense being a friend.
yeah, I wonder how to ask this. Yeah, where you're sitting and how this conversation has moved through you, or what you're feeling, or if anything has been stirred up for you.
Yeah, it's like super nice to connect. Really nice to just share my side of things. Yeah, I'm like now with it's almost like the last thing we talked about. It's like layering on, where I'm like aware that the yeah, those like anxieties I brought in around like, oh, does this make sense to people? And that like connecting to the sort of 6-year-old part of
Mm,
me, and just I don't know, just a kind of like energetic layering and like re going back through the process of kind of like the hug that was given. And
mm,
yeah, it feels nice, feels good. And there's like an energetic process that's still moving through under the surface.
mm. Yeah, I have the sense that, well, it made sense to me, and I have the sense that you said exactly what you needed to say for the people who need to hear it. So thank you for that. And thank you for being so generous in answering my questions, and for all of the work and pain and challenge and growth you had to go through to get here. I really honor that. And I think this is true for everyone, but certainly with your story and everything that you've been through to have to make sense of and learn and feel. And grow and how confusing that must have been for you. And I feel really grateful that that you did go through that and you did that work and you learned all of that. And um, you know, the last thing I'll say is, um, yeah, I feel grateful for this sense of you being a kind of foundation for so many people and someone that people can lean on. And I know that you've been such a kind friend to so many people that I care about, and uh, how when you're on a path of your own, it's strange to be becoming the person that you are and making sense of the experiences that you have that are different from what other people understand or can tell you about. And I'm so glad that so many people that I know and people I don't have had you as a spiritual friend or guide or companion to uh, be a resource through that process and making sense of who someone is and how to live in the world. And I feel really grateful for that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been really, really nice. And thank you for saying that. Yeah, really
So
appreciate
welcome.
it.